America sold you a number. Six figures. For decades, that number meant safety. It meant you had crossed an invisible line into adulthood. Stability. Respect. Breathing room. If you made $100,000 a year, you weren't just surviving. You were doing well. You could buy a home, raise a family, take vacations without guilt, put money away for retirement, and assume the future would cooperate. That was the promise. And in 2026, that number still sounds powerful. Say it out loud. $100,000 a year. It sounds like success. But here's the quiet reality unfolding across the country. In large parts of America, $100,000 no longer buys peace of mind. It buys pressure. It buys responsibility. It buys a lifestyle that looks stable from the outside but feels fragile on the inside. That's the $100K salary trap. On paper, you're winning. In real life, you're calculating. You're checking your bank account before dinner plans. You're spacing out large purchases. You're hoping the car doesn't break down this year. You're praying no one in your family gets sick. And the strangest part? You're earning more than most households in the country. So why does it feel like you're barely ahead? To understand the trap, you have to start with something uncomfortable. The number didn't change. The system around it did. Let's start with taxes. A $100,000 salary is not $100,000 in your pocket. Not even close. Federal income tax takes a portion immediately. Then Social Security, Medicare. If you live in a state with income tax, that's another slice gone. By the time the money actually hits your bank account, many earners are left with something closer to $70,000 or $75,000. That's your real operating income. Not the headline number. Not the LinkedIn brag. The actual cash you use to live. And before you even touch it, you're encouraged responsibly to contribute to retirement. Maybe 10%. Maybe 15%. You set aside money for a 401k because you know the future won't fund itself. Now your usable income shrinks again. Then comes health insurance. Premiums deducted from your paycheck. Deductibles waiting in the background. Co-pays that add up. Out-of-pocket maximums that hover like a warning sign. One unexpected medical issue can wipe out months of savings. Now, let's talk about the biggest expense of all. Housing. For many Americans in 2026, housing isn't just expensive, it's misaligned. Home prices surged earlier in the decade. Even where prices stabilized, mortgage rates changed the equation. A house that once felt manageable now carries a monthly payment, hundreds, sometimes thousands higher than it would have just a few years ago. So you rent. In major metro areas, a modest apartment can easily cost $3,000 per month. In some cities, much more. That's $36,000 a year. If your take-home pay is $72,000, half of it is gone before you buy groceries. Half. And that doesn't include utilities, internet, parking, insurance. Housing alone can consume 50% or more of your net income. That's not financial freedom. That's structural tension. Now add transportation. Most Americans don't have the luxury of skipping a car. Car payments average hundreds per month. Insurance premiums have climbed significantly in recent years. Maintenance costs more than it used to. Gas prices fluctuate unpredictably. When you add everything together, reliable transportation can cost $800 to $1,200 per month. That's another $10,000 or more per year, quietly disappearing. Now, factor in food. Grocery prices have not returned to what people considered normal years ago. Families routinely spend far more per week than they expected. Even single professionals feel it. A quick stop at the store becomes $120 without trying. It's not one dramatic purchase. It's accumulation. And this is where the trap begins to reveal itself. Nothing about a $100K life looks irresponsible. You're not flying private. You're not buying yachts. You're not living recklessly. You're doing what responsible adults are told to do. Work hard, earn more, upgrade carefully. But somewhere along the way, the cost of maintaining a normal, middle-class lifestyle rose faster than the salary attached to it. And most people didn't notice the shift until they were already inside it. From the outside, six figures still signals success. From the inside, it often feels like maintenance mode. You're not building wealth at the speed you imagined. You're sustaining a system that demands constant input. And the margin for error keeps shrinking. This isn't collapse. It's compression, and compression creates stress even at incomes that once guaranteed comfort. That's the beginning of the $100K trap. Now, let's add another layer. Childcare. If you don't have kids, this part can feel abstract. If you do, it's immediate. In many parts of the country, full-time childcare costs as much as a mortgage used to. $1,200, $1,500, sometimes $2,000 per month per child. 2 children can mean $3,000 a month. That's $36,000 a year. Remember, after taxes, your $100K salary might already be around $72,000. If rent takes $36,000 and childcare takes another $30,000, you are left with almost nothing before food, transportation, healthcare, and debt. This is why so many dual-income households making over $100K still feel pressure every single month. It's not that they're irresponsible. It's arithmetic. Now, let's talk about debt. Many six-figure earners are educated professionals, engineers, nurses, managers, analysts, consultants, small business owners. And education in America often comes with a price tag. Student loan payments of $400, $600, even $1,000 per month are common. That's another fixed obligation. Another bill that doesn't care how high rent has become. Then there are credit cards. Not luxury spending. Not designer handbags and champagne. Just life. A car repair in the same month as a medical bill. A flight home for a family emergency. A broken appliance. A deductible you didn't expect. When your baseline expenses already consume most of your income, unexpected costs don't disappear. They shift forward. On to credit. Nationally, credit card balances have climbed, including among higher-income households. Not because they don't understand budgeting, but because income stability and cost stability no longer move together. Expenses cluster. Income stays linear. That mismatch creates tension. Now add another invisible factor. Geography. In some rural areas or lower-cost states, $100K still provides breathing room. You can buy property, save aggressively, live comfortably. But in major economic hubs, coastal cities, tech corridors, high-growth metros, $100K places you in an awkward middle zone. You make too much to qualify for most assistance, but not enough to feel secure. You're not struggling enough to be visible, not wealthy enough to be relaxed. You sit in the financial middle exposed to high costs without insulation. This is the six-figure squeeze. And it's subtle. Because from the outside, you still look successful. You have a respectable job title. You live in a decent neighborhood. You take occasional vacations, sometimes financed months in advance. You post normal, happy photos. No one sees the internal calculations. No one sees the spreadsheet where every expense is categorized and monitored. No one sees the hesitation before committing to a large purchase. No one sees the quiet thought that runs through your mind. If I lost this job, how long would we last? That question is the real indicator of security. And for many six-figure earners in 2026, the answer is uncomfortable. A few months. Maybe less. This isn't poverty. It's fragility. You can earn more than 80% of households in the country and still feel financially exposed. That contradiction creates psychological strain, because culturally, six figures still means you made it. So if you feel stressed, you assume it's your fault. Maybe you mismanaged something. Maybe you're not disciplined enough. Maybe you're not grateful enough. But what if the stress isn't purely personal? What if the benchmark shifted and no one updated the definition? Decades ago, $100K represented upper middle class comfort in most of America. Today, in many cities, it represents middle stability at best. The lifestyle associated with six figures was built in a different cost structure. Lower housing ratios, lower healthcare costs, lower tuition burdens, lower insurance premiums, lower subscription creep. Yes, subscription creep. Streaming services, software, cloud storage, food delivery memberships, fitness apps, children's activities, professional tools. Each one feels small. $9.99, $14.99, $29.99. Individually harmless, collectively heavy. It's death by 1,000 recurring charges. And when income growth slows while recurring costs multiply, the pressure builds quietly. This is why so many Americans earning $100K don't feel rich. Because wealth isn't defined by income. It's defined by margin, by flexibility, by the ability to absorb shocks without fear. And margin is shrinking. That's the trap tightening. You're doing everything right. You studied. You worked. You advanced. You negotiated. You crossed into six figures. And, instead of freedom, you found obligation. Instead of relief, you found maintenance. You're not building the future at the speed you imagined. You're defending the present. That shift from growth to defense is what transforms six figures from a milestone into a ceiling. And we're only halfway through the story. Now let's talk about something even more uncomfortable. Expectation. For decades, Americans were handed a formula. Work hard. Get educated. Increase your income. Climb steadily. There was an implied promise attached to that formula. At a certain income level, life becomes stable, predictable, secure. Six figures was that psychological milestone. It wasn't just about money. It was about arrival. But in 2026, something feels off. Because many people who hit that number don't feel like they arrived anywhere. They feel like they entered a more expensive stage of the race. This is where generational comparison starts creeping in. Your parents may have bought a home on one income. They may have supported a family without needing two full-time careers. They may have faced inflation, recessions, and economic cycles, but the ratio between income and core expenses looked different. Housing relative to income was lower. College tuition relative to income was lower. Healthcare relative to income was lower. In many cases, insurance costs were lower. The cost of simply participating in middle-class life was lower. Today, even with higher nominal salaries, the cost structure has shifted. And when younger professionals compare outcomes instead of just salaries, the tension becomes visible. You can earn more than your parents did, adjusted for inflation, and still struggle to replicate their lifestyle. That disconnect erodes confidence in the system. Quietly. It doesn't explode into outrage overnight. It shows up as hesitation. People delay buying homes because the math feels tight. They delay having children because childcare costs feel overwhelming. They delay investing aggressively because liquidity feels safer than long-term risk. They stay in jobs they dislike because employer-sponsored health insurance feels too valuable to lose. They don't feel trapped by poverty. They feel trapped by responsibility. That distinction matters. Because the $100K trap is not about being poor. It's about being anchored. Your income is high enough that walking away from it would be painful, but not high enough that staying feels easy. So you endure. You optimize. You negotiate small raises. You refinance. You cut subscriptions. You meal prep. You comparison shop for insurance. You do everything right. And yet the sense of finally breathing never quite arrives. Now add another factor: economic uncertainty. In recent years, layoffs have hit industries once considered stable: technology, media, finance, healthcare restructuring, corporate downsizing. Even high earners are not immune. When you know your income depends on forces beyond your control, market cycles, automation, corporate strategy, security becomes conditional. Conditional security creates background anxiety. It doesn't scream. It hums. A low-frequency awareness that things could shift quickly. And when your expenses are calibrated tightly around your income, that hum grows louder. This is why so many six-figure earners build emergency funds obsessively. Why they hoard cash. Why they hesitate before major commitments. It's not paranoia. It's adaptation. Because the old assumption that income level equals safety no longer feels guaranteed. Another invisible shift is asset inflation. Over the past decade, asset prices, homes, equities, certain investments rose significantly. If you bought early, you benefited. If you entered later, you faced higher entry costs. So now, someone earning $100K in 2026 may face dramatically different opportunities than someone earning the same amount in 2016. The ladder moved upward. The first rung got higher. And when entry costs rise faster than income, wealth accumulation slows. You're not failing. You're entering a steeper system. That creates another psychological layer to the trap. You feel behind even if objectively you're doing well. Because success is relative. You compare yourself to peers who bought homes earlier, to colleagues whose stock options matured at the right time, to friends who moved to lower-cost states before prices surged. Timing matters. And many six-figure earners feel like they arrived just after the window narrowed. So what does that do culturally? It reshapes ambition. Instead of dreaming big, people aim for stability. Instead of expansion, they focus on defense. Instead of chasing luxury, they chase predictability. This is not how the American dream was marketed. The dream was about upward mobility, about momentum, about each generation climbing higher than the last. When six figures no longer guarantees upward movement, only maintenance momentum slows. And when momentum slows across millions of households, the broader economy feels it. Consumer spending shifts. Risk tolerance drops. Entrepreneurship declines. Mobility decreases. The middle tightens. And here's the most important part. This isn't happening only at lower income levels anymore. The squeeze is creeping upward, into professional classes, into educated households, into people who followed every recommended path. That's why the $100K salary trap matters. Because it signals that the definition of making it has changed without public acknowledgement. The milestone stayed the same. The meaning didn't. And when symbolic milestones lose their power, cultural confidence erodes. Not dramatically. Gradually. Quietly. You don't see riots. You see fatigue. You see burnout. You see people questioning whether the climb is worth it. And we still haven't reached the core question. If $100K isn't what it used to be, what actually defines security in 2026? So, what actually defines security in 2026? It's not a number. That's the first uncomfortable realization. For decades, income was treated as the primary indicator of safety. Earn more, worry less. Cross six figures, unlock stability. But in today's economy, security has become structural. It depends on ratios, not raw salary. Your housing cost relative to your income. Your debt relative to your flexibility. Your fixed expenses relative to your margin. Two households earning the same $100,000 can live completely different realities. One rents modestly, avoids lifestyle inflation, carries little debt, invests consistently, and maintains low fixed obligations. The other stretches for a better neighborhood, finances 2 newer vehicles, carries student loans, pays high childcare costs, and lives with heavy monthly commitments. Same income, different pressure. Security is no longer about how much you make. It's about how much breathing room you have after you make it. And breathing room is becoming rare because modern middle-class life is expensive to maintain. You're expected to save for retirement aggressively because pensions are rare. You're expected to fund college savings because tuition is high. You're expected to maintain reliable transportation because most cities require it. You're expected to carry comprehensive insurance because risk is costly. You're expected to upgrade skills constantly because job markets evolve quickly. Every responsibility is rational, but stacked together, they create weight. And when you earn $100K, you're often carrying all of it without the cushion people assume you have. That's the psychological fracture at the center of the trap. Externally, you're categorized as well off. Internally, you're managing complexity. This mismatch creates isolation. Because when you're earning 6 figures, you don't feel entitled to complain. You know others earn less. You know others struggle more visibly. So you internalize the stress. You optimize quietly. You don't broadcast financial anxiety because culturally, you're supposed to be fine. But being fine and feeling secure are not the same thing. Security is the ability to absorb a shock without panic. A job loss, a health issue, a market downturn, a family emergency. Ask yourself honestly, if your income stopped tomorrow, how long would your current lifestyle sustain itself? That answer, not your salary, defines your real position. And for many 6-figure earners in 2026, the answer is uncomfortable. 3 months. 6 months. Maybe less. That fragility is the trap. Because it forces behavioral shifts. People avoid risk. They delay career changes. They hesitate to start businesses. They cling to employer-sponsored healthcare. They remain in cities that strain their budgets because that's where opportunity exists. They chase incremental raises instead of structural freedom. The pursuit becomes maintenance. And maintenance feels different than progress. This doesn't mean 6 figures are meaningless. Far from it. In many regions, $100K still provides genuine comfort. In lower-cost states, it can enable strong savings and asset growth. But nationally, especially in major metros, it no longer guarantees upward mobility. It guarantees participation. You're in the game, but you're not necessarily winning it. And that realization reshapes ambition. Some respond by relocating to lower-cost areas. Some downsize expectations. Some double down on investing. Some redefine success, entirely valuing time flexibility over income growth. Because eventually, the core insight becomes clear. Income alone cannot compensate for structural imbalance. If core expenses rise faster than wages over long periods, milestones lose meaning. The American dream was never purely about a number. It was about trajectory. About each stage of life feeling more stable than the last. When $100K once symbolized arrival, it marked a psychological shift into comfort. In 2026, for many Americans, it marks entry into responsibility at scale. You're not chasing survival anymore. You're managing complexity. That's a different kind of stress. And it explains why so many people earning 6 figures still feel stretched. Not because they failed, but because the environment recalibrated. The benchmark stayed public. The math changed privately. So if you make $100,000 a year and still feel behind, you're not irrational. You're not uniquely bad with money. You're navigating an economy where stability depends less on what you earn and more on what you owe, where you live, and how tightly your life is structured around fixed costs. The $100K salary trap isn't about greed. It's about expectations colliding with reality. It's about discovering that the milestone you aimed for doesn't unlock what it once promised. And maybe the deeper question isn't whether $100K is enough. Maybe the deeper question is this: if traditional income milestones no longer guarantee security, what kind of system would? Because when six figures feel fragile, the conversation shifts. From ambition to structure, from status to sustainability, from chasing a number to building margin. In 2026, $100,000 still sounds impressive. But for millions of Americans, it's no longer a finish line. It's a balancing act. And the quiet tension of that balancing act is what makes it a trap.